The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
It's good. Just in the pre-show that we don't record, we were just sharing some stories, spinning some yarns, some DuckTales,
Yeah. Oh, woo.
And that's it. No more of the theme song. Otherwise, we'll get a copyright notice.
Yeah, I literally my notes on this, because I always keep notes in Google Keep, is a picture of a duck and then tails, a woo.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can. I don't think that Disney could sue you for that, because I think that you're legally obligated by law that if somebody says DuckTales, you have to then do the immediate call and response,
Yes, which much like a drug dealer saying like, well, I had to pay for the skin damage to this meth addict's neck. And it's like, well, yeah, because you caused it. It's like, why does everyone say "oh woo" after DuckTales? Like, well, that's Disney's fault. Like nobody said this is what we want to happen, but it is what happened, and this is the world we live in now.
This is where we're at. But what do we play, man?
We played DuckTales the original. Ooh, for for the Nintendo. I didn't realize that this game had at least 2 sequels and was ported to at least a couple other consoles. Like that's super common at this time in history, but like there are certain games that for whatever reason, there's like the canonical version, and the NES DuckTales is the canonical version. When you say, oh, you remember DuckTales, the old DuckTales video game, no one thinks you mean DuckTales 2. No one thinks you mean DuckTales for the Game Boy. Like they just don't, right? Like that might be what they meant, and then you need to like adjust in the conversation. But this is the DuckTales for the Nintendo Entertainment System, which was remastered, I guess. I think it's called DuckTales Remastered, like quite a bit later. Which has been a real thorn in my side, because every time I'm like, oh, I need to go look up the year it was released, or oh, I need to have some screenshots in front of me for when we're recording the episode. Obviously, all of the Google search results first surface things for remastered, and I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. But every time it's like DuckTales NES, right? Every single time.
Yep.
And I was just like, will the remastered one actually push this out of like canonical fame, even though the remastered one is a remaster of the canonical game? Who can say? 9/14/1989. So this game actually we just passed an anniversary, I guess, for it about a month ago.
Yeah, there you go. And so what's your nostalgia experience for this one?
So weirdly, I did not own this game, but I think every single person I knew who had a Nintendo owned it. So it was kind of like if you're a Disney fan, or if your parents were trying to buy you games that were like wholesome games or something. This was like Mario, Duck Hunt, the gold Zelda cartridge, right? Like if you owned a Nintendo and you didn't own this game, it was nearby enough that it was like you owned it, right? I can think of at least 3 friends and one of my cousins that owned this game. So like I had regular access to it, played it quite a bit. And weirdly, and we'll talk about this more as we get into the visuals, but this is one of those games that like looks exactly in reality the way it did in my memory. And whether or not that's good, like we'll get there for sure. But I was just struck by how burned in these pixels were. I was like, damn, that's something, right? Like it doesn't look better or worse in my memory. Like it just looks exactly the same. And I was like, maybe I played this even more than I remember, but I definitely played this one a lot with, I always confuse which game was on which console, but Castle of Illusion, I think, was the Nintendo one. And then World of Illusion was the 16-bit one. So yeah, Castle of Illusion and this were like my go-to Disney Nintendo games.
I'm in a similar boat. I know I didn't own this. I definitely remember playing it and it's one of those where I don't think I played it a whole lot because I didn't like it wasn't it wasn't like A Link to the Past where I picked it up and I was like, ah, yes, and then all of a sudden my brain went and found the box in the corner of my brain, opened it up, and a Pandora's box exploded into all of the memories of like how to play. But I do know I played it pretty regularly because when we played Shovel Knight, immediately I was like, oh wait, this is pulling elements from this game, So yeah, so it which I think kind of speaks to, and again, we'll get to, like whether or not it held up, but it certainly speaks to how memorable the game is that I could be like, I don't think I played this a whole lot. I can't really remember playing it, but I could tell you immediately some of the mechanics that were involved with it in other games, So yeah, so no, definitely, and definitely when I was like, no, let's go polish this one off. And I don't think that it was until we started playing it that you or started kicking around the idea of playing it that you were like, yeah, no, people have remastered this, people have like this is a popular game. It's like, oh wow, all right, which again, the thing that blows my mind is that this is technically a video game based off of a TV show. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So just like GoldenEye and like the full few other ones where video games that we played that have been ports from TV shows and stuff. It's just weird that 95% of the time, if it's like, oh, we made a video game based off of a movie, it's like, it's gonna be trash. It's trash. Right. But we've been lucky to be selecting the ones where we're like, oh, this game's a lot of fun. Oh, right. It's based off of like a TV show, isn't it? So that's kind of cool.
Isn't that nice though? Like every time, because I think we both have that exact same shock reaction every time where we're like, oh crap, right. This is licensed IP, right? And I think it's nice that like it forces that little moment of like, right. When you're trying to critique something like as an art object and as a cultural object and as like an experience for the player, you have to be aware of those bias because it's so easy to just not even think, oh, I'm about to play a licensed game. And so I've already set my bar lower and I've already calibrated lower, right? And Lord knows we've played some licensed games that were real garbage piles, but we've also played a bunch that were excellent. And I suspect that stereotype came from somewhere and that there's more garbage fires than there are diamonds in the rough. But it is nice to know that there are some games that are diamonds in the rough, and it's not like, oh, once you put a familiar character on the box, it's instant garbage fire.
And it is nice to know that like the games that are diamonds in the rough are that they are diamonds that there are diamonds in the rough, but that the GoldenEye was not singular. It's not like, oh, there's one game that did this. It's like, no, because if there's one game where you could be like, oh well, it's a fluke. It's like, no, guys, look, it can be done. You can take licensed IP and make a game out of it, and it can be good. It can be done. It's been done enough times that it's not a statistical aberration. It just just put some additional money behind it, and then you can create a game that will last a little while and have a good reputation.
But did they do it this time? Ooh.
Well, that's the question. But just like we were saying, putting some additional money behind stuff, people may want to eventually put some additional money behind us, which leads us to
begging for additional money because we have done like 130 something episodes without quality. If only we had more money, we could do a good job.
People have no idea how amazing these episodes would be if we had more money.
What do you get if you support us? You can get nice conversations with us on the Twitters. That one's free. You can get your games onto our requested games list by talking to us either through the contact form or through Twitter. All that stuff's free. You can watch me on Twitch. I play a lot of the games that we stream, or I stream a lot of the games that we play. There we go. Verb order matters.
You got there.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of both, but so if you want to like actually see some of the behind the scenes stuff, all that stuff you can do for free. The things that help us out the most, aside from your loving commentary, which we love deeply, is if you recommend the show either through rating and review or just literally tell someone, that helps other people find us. And if you actually do want to chip in some monies on our Patreon, which you find links in the show notes, you can get access to the after show, which everybody gets no matter what level they support at. But if you support at high enough levels, you get extra stuff like having your name shouted out on the show. So with that, I want to give a special thanks to our 8-bit classics, Yarno,
A green-capped Louie,
Jason,
a red-capped Huey,
John,
a blue-capped Dewey,
and Kevin.
a witty Webby Vanderquack.
I could never remember their last names because they're all like such obvious duck names, but they just don't.
Right?
They don't always stand out of my mind. And our 16-bit heroes, Jacob,
Launchpad McQuack,
and Michael,
a very wealthy Scrooge McDuck,
and our full 3D supporter, David.
Darkwing Duck. When there's trouble, you call DW. Darkwing Duck. Let's get dangerous.
You're now making me alarmingly second guess myself. Was Darkwing Duck a direct spin-off of DuckTales? Like, are they in the same universe?
Yes, because his sidekick is Launchpad McQuack.
Oh my lord, you're right. Yeah, in the robot suit.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, man.
Damn. So this is like a Metropolis Gotham situation.
Yes. Yeah. No, they are absolutely in the same universe. And Scrooge, I guess, would be, I mean, closer to Iron Man, right? And then Darkwing Duck is the Batman. And the reason why, so we always want to do like the scaling bit, right? But the last person is always like the twist, because that's how comedy works, right? And so I was like, well, nobody wants to be Scrooge McDuck. You want to have Scrooge McDuck's money.
It's true.
That's the thing, right? Because Scrooge McDuck isn't happy, right? He is incredibly wealthy, but I would argue that he is the poorest of all of them because he has the most want. And wealth stems not from the having of things, but from the absence of wants. So I put a lot of thought into this, and so that's why I was like, the topper has got to be somebody else. And then I was like, oh, well, Darkwing Duck, right? I mean, he's weird. So that's why.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling you. So I'm going to kick us off in visuals with a comment that I already made, and will reiterate that these graphics look exactly the way I remembered them. And I absolutely mean that as a compliment, because we've played a bunch of games now that are licensed, and they're licensed from cartoons, which you would expect, right? Kids watch cartoons, kids play video games, right? It's an obvious, just like books get adapted into movies, right? It's a super obvious pipeline. I'm always blown away now that we've had to assess this several times, that not all cartoon art adapts well to low pixel count art, right? Your 8 and 16-bit era games. By the time they got to 3D, they could make it look exactly like the cartoon if they wanted to. But at this time in history, the celluloid, right, the ink on paper, so to speak, had infinitely more fidelity than they could do with a video game. And yet everything in this is just right. I mean, you would never mistake it for the cartoon. It's not that they have recreated the cartoon. They've recreated the exact feeling of the characters, the way like Scrooge he doesn't really stand up straight. When he's still, he's sort of like on his cane. When he walks, he's sort of got the little duck waddle, because they're all ducks, right? Huey, Dewey, and Louie look, their head is like very round in a specific way that communicates that they are children, whereas Scrooge has the little, like, I guess they're supposed to be like mutton chops. His feathers like kind of stick out on the sides, right? Like they're mutton chops.
McDuck, so he's supposed to be Scottish. He has like the big Scottish mutton chops.
Yeah. Well, and isn't the character Scrooge usually portrayed with mutton chops? Or am I making that up?
Is he? I don't know.
I mean, yes, now. Yes.
Obviously. Look, I have obviously read all of the classics, including extensively the work of Dickens, and I can tell you for sure that he had mutton chops. Absolutely.
Yeah. See, exactly. Like we were saying. But all of those little details are not easy things to implement when you have, I don't know, these are probably like 16 by 16 sprites, if I had to guess, maybe less. That's not a ton of space, and yet everything is there. I mean, he's even got the little band on his hat. He's got the little, I can never remember what they're called, but the old fashioned things you wear over shoes, like over dress shoes, the white around his foot, because of course he doesn't wear shoes, but he has those things. They have a silly name. They're like Buckies or Blickies or something stupid, but he's got them in this game. Like, with his whole foot is probably 5 or 6 pixels, and they decided to spend half of them on making sure you can see that he has those things on his feet. And it's just, I love it, man. I love it. Like, this is why my brain didn't have to make crap up for remembering these visuals, is because they're just so good.
No, they are, absolutely. And to your point, right, is that it's not so much, do they, are they picture perfect? No, but if you said, like, hey, draw a Scrooge McDuck sprite, this is what you would draw, like, and the amount of love and attention to detail that they put into it is very clear, because two of the visuals for the sake of visuals that just really screamed out to me is, one is when you go to do your golf swing, you put the thing down and his tail kind of goes a little bit, because he's like waggling his bottom, because he's like, because that's what you do when you get ready to golf,
Yeah, if you're a cartoon character and you're about to swing golf club, you got to shake your hips for some reason.
Yeah, it's it's how you let people know that you're about to golf. So I mean, that, like, literally, they didn't have to do that, but they put in that visual, to just kind of be like, hey, it's nice. It cues the player into the fact that you are executing on the golf swing, which is good and helpful. But two is, it's like, it reinforces the fact that you're playing a game that's a cartoon. The other one that reinforces the fact that you're playing a game that's a cartoon is when you do that golf swing and you hit something that hits back, like, in the sense that it, like, you hit it and it didn't move. His eyes do this little, like, oh God, like,
it's the vibration, like, rattles up through him.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And on the NES, are you kidding me? Like, that's the thing, is that, if somebody said, oh yeah, I've got a PlayStation 5 DuckTales game where when he hits the thing, like, it shows the vibration running up him, I'd be like, yeah, of course. But for the NES, they didn't have to do that. They could have just been like, I'm just saying that what they could have done, right, would be, some kind of like an audio cue, like like in some other terrible game,
Yeah.
like, but they didn't. They did this.
I
nice,
think,
so
I think something about the NES that is a confounding factor a little bit is, and I don't remember if this has come up or not, but inside the NES cartridge in the later NES games, they actually put hardware in the cartridge that, like, yeah, right. So depending on what era of NES game you're talking about, it's like, well, Super Mario Brothers 3 literally did things Super Mario Brothers 1 could not do. Right. It's
right.
not really a fair comparison, because they're not running on the same hardware. And I'm sure there's a very easy to find list of every game and what chip they used in the cartridge and which ones were cheating by shoving extra stuff in there and which ones weren't. And then on the Super Nintendo, they actually marketed that, right? It was the FX chip, you remember, on Star Fox. And I think Donkey Kong also was like, this one has the thing in it, right? They realized, like, there was an opportunity there. And I say all that to say this. This game came out in 1989. I don't think this probably had the cutting edge additional technology in it, but even if it did, it's not cutting edge technology that makes the little tail waggle, right? It's not cutting edge technology that decides Scrooge McDuck's eyes popping when he hits an immovable object is a fun, in-universe way to communicate to the player that this is not a thing you can move with the golf swing, right? That's just good art direction. And I think that's where the superstars are, right? Or the people who are like, yeah, we had the regular base Nintendo hardware and we did the right thing because we had good art direction. And then the most soul-crushing tragedies are the people who are like, oh, we had all this unlimited power and it still looks like a pile of ass. It's like, oh, come on, man. Like, you can't, there's things you can't do if you don't have the hardware to drive them, but that's those are the tools, right? The tools don't build the house. A pile of wood and nails and a hammer is not a house. It's the materials to build a house. We still need the craftsmanship, and this game is just oozing craftsmanship.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, the an analogy that I've been using a lot at work is, basically there's two different systems that we're deciding between, and one of them is the equivalent of like a Cadillac, right? It's the one that's in use now. And we keep saying it's a Cadillac, but it's broken, right? So it's like it needs a fuel injector, it needs some stuff. So once we get those things in there, it'll run forever, right? I was like, or we have a Kia Sorento, which is not a Cadillac, right? But it runs now, So we keep using that analogy. I mentioned that because the thing that I said recently was because people are like, well, if we can just get this Cadillac fixed, I'm like, when's the mechanic coming? Like when is the fix coming, right? But I think that a lot of the time for these Nintendo games, to use that analogy, is some developers are willing to sit down and say, well, the mechanic didn't show up, so I started walking and this was as far as I could get, as opposed to saying, no, I could tell that the mechanic wasn't showing up, that this Cadillac was broken and I couldn't get, so I hitched a ride with somebody. I hopped in a Kia Sorento. I took the leather out of the took the leather out of the Cadillac and fashioned it into a flying machine, and got a running start and just glided my way down. Like there are many Nintendo games that I feel kind of rested on the fact of like, well, this is what the Nintendo can do, and then many other games like this one where they said, yeah, but what if okay, so we can't, and what almost certainly happened, like for the eyes popping, right, is they probably said like, oh, well, like when you hit something in a cartoon and it doesn't move, the vibration, to your point, right, the vibration runs all the way up the thing. They're like, we should do that. And somebody inevitably said, there is no way the Nintendo can do that. And then for many developers and for many games at the time, that's where the conversation ends, right? Well, we can't do that. But then the next question is, well, what can we do? And it's like, well, we can make his eyes rattle. And it's like, that will have a similar feel to it. And thus, that is where the great games are born, in my opinion.
Yeah. That love and care is applied, I think, throughout the environments. Mostly. And I like the characters to me are where they obviously put most of their attention, because that's probably where the thumb of the Walt Disney Corporation was like, you had better do these characters justice, because we will yank this project. We will replace your people with our people, right? Whatever corporate threats. But
sorry, I'm picturing how like Disney's threat is that Disney is Smith from the Matrix, right? So it's like, if you screw this up, we're gonna Smith you. But like when they do it, it's just Hugo Weaving as Smith, but with the Disney ears.
The big Mickey ears.
Yeah.
Now, just imagine all of the scenes from The Matrix where, Hugo Weaving's got his like kind of weird accent, baritone voice, but replace, everything now ends with,
It's like, there is one other thing that shares these properties: a virus.
See, if this was the old days of YouTube, there would be like a YouTube poop video in here just waiting to happen.
Yeah, right.
So the environments though are they're not like classic Disney, right? These are very generic video game environments. There's there's the jungle, there's the mine, there's the Transylvania, there's the Himalayas, there's different levels that you can stage select between. But they're all super good, and this is one of the first of probably several places where I'll have to say the environments are what give this game away to me as a Capcom game, because every level looks a lot like a Mega Man level, and it feels a lot like a Mega Man level, right? So that's one of those things where it's like, oh, this is, if you lifted the Disney characters out of this and you took the HUD away and you just looked at these levels and someone said, hey, these are levels from a Nintendo game, do you think you could guess the developer? I don't think Capcom would be far down your list, because they just have that like Mega Man-y kind of feel, which is
Mhm.
awesome. Like
Yeah.
Capcom, the Mega Man classic games are phenomenal games for the most part. Some of them are some of the best Mega Man games in the whole series are the Mega Man classic games. So like that's they're not Disney. They don't feel Disney. Nothing about them is Disney, and that's fine because they're still really good video game levels, and that's what they need to be.
Yeah. And I think that obviously, it's one of the reasons why Parks and Recreation is so great is because you got a bunch of actors that are playing to their strengths, right? So, if Capcom's like, look, and I think that Capcom kind of knew, especially with the NES and the early NES, right? It's like, well, because to your point, right? There's jungles, there's Transylvania, there's jungle, castle, cave, like mountains,
snow and ice, yeah,
snow and ice, right? And it's like, well, we need to create varied environments, right? That have different visual feels. And those are the ones we can do, right? Like you can very clearly determine, a jungle / forest from a mountain because jungles and forests are green. So I think that basically what they did was they were like, what are the 8 primary colors that we have? And now let's base a level around that color. You have black, you have, spooky castle, got it. You got green, jungle or forest, got it. You got white, snowy mountains, got it. And again, and I say that it sounds, pejorative, but no, that's good because they said, what can we do? Again, like what can we make? And then they made it. Honestly, I think to your point, if they stripped away the HUD and all this sort of stuff and they said, name the game that this is from, it's a Capcom game, name the game that's from, you say Mega Man. This is a Mega Man game, and to your point, right? That's not like if somebody took my artwork and said like, who made this? And somebody said Picasso, I'd be like, well,
Thank
neat.
you.
I mean, no, but yes, like great, sell that bad boy, So yeah, so no, I definitely think that the levels are incredibly varied. They have varied feels, and they also have like each level kind of feels like it has kind of like a gimmick or a mechanic behind it, that is nice as well, which we'll get into in mechanics. This is a minor note that this game is not the only one that is an offender of, but it does it. Bosses don't have health bars.
They do not. No.
And I hate that, man, because for 2 reasons. One is I like to know how close I am to beating beating it, right? Because if I've got, 1 or 2 hits left, I want to know if the bad guy has 1 or 2 hits left, or if I'm just throwing good money after bad and I just need to say like, alrighty, this wasn't a good run, let me try again. Also, I need to like, yes, the bad guys flash when you hit them, which is good. But you deep down, you never really know if what you're doing is the thing that's going to kill the boss, because it's like, oh, well, this boss, the only thing like the one in Transylvania, the only thing you can really do, or no, I'm thinking of the jungle one. The jungle one, there's nothing in there. You can pogo stick him to death, like that's how you beat him, right? But at the same point, you're just kind of like, well, maybe if I hit the side of the walls, like rocks will fall down or something crazy or insane, So you're just gonna have to hope that what you're doing is the way to kill them, and it just takes nothing to put a health bar to a bad guy. So I don't think it's a deliberate choice. I think it was just kind of no, they're flashing. They get it. You get it, right? But I never know why that choice is made.
I will give this game credit for at least being consistent, because the worst thing a game can do is have animations and behaviors and effects and whatever that are similar or even the same as taking damage but not doing damage, right?
Yes. That's
If I jump on an enemy and they flash and it interrupts the thing they were doing, then I assume they took damage. But it's like, oh no, you can stun them with the wood cane, but you need the adamantium cane to actually do damage. So like, no, you were never going to be able to win. And it's like, right. And how would I have known that? Like,
right.
How would I have ever put that together? Right. Like in Mega Man, for example, if you shoot them with your lemons, you can see it's not doing very much damage. But when you try other weapons, you might see, oh, this one does 5 pips of damage or bars. of damage instead of, 1 like my lemons do. So you have the information. You have to do a lot of trial and error, but you can get the information you need. So I agree with you. I generally prefer a health bar. But at least this is consistent. It's like they're flashing, I hurt them. Nothing ever does that unless it took damage. And a lot of the enemies are just one hit anyway. So,
well, and I think that to be fair, there's like occasional times when, to me, to deliberately not give an enemy a health bar is if you want the player to not know whether or not the boss can be beaten. Like that to me is like when you would make that choice, right? So for two great examples, if you want to throw Cthulhu in the game, that can't have a health bar because the whole point of Cthulhu is that it's this like unimaginable evil, right? But to use a more down to earth example, Vile in Mega Man's intro stage. That's an example of when you don't need a health bar, and also the Bumblebee as the misdirect before that, right? It's because that way like you don't know like am I supposed to be able to beat this guy? I mean, honestly, I played Mega Man X a million times, and there was always that part of me. It was like, maybe I can beat Vile this time. Maybe this time, in the same way that like every time I watched Titanic, I'd be like, maybe if they just spin the wheel a little bit harder, they'll miss the iceberg this time.
There you go. No.
So
I do think like the Vile example is a good one because that's specifically breaking with convention, right? So the whole intro stage doesn't have health bars, so that when you fight Vile, you're like, maybe they've gotten rid of health bars. I don't know what's going on, right? And then later, in fact, no, the health bars are still a thing, right?
Right.
And again, like the consistency is the key there because you can't break convention without convention. They had to spend like 8 Mega Man games or whatever making that convention so that when you played Mega Man X, you were like, am I winning? Right. So
yeah,
that's why I say like this game, I agree with you. Like, especially for kids, like if you're targeting kids, like, yeah, just I have a health bar, throw a health bar in there, but at least they're consistent.
Yes, that is true. The one final note that I have for visuals, is one throwaway, which is that it very much so mirrors the Mega Man visual for how far can I get off of this cliff before I fall to my death? And the answer is I can have a single pinky toe on the side of that cliff and like just, dig my toes into the side of the cliff,
That's why he wears the those things on his feet. They're just very sticky.
Yeah, well, I assume that you were going to say he wears the things on his feet to keep like his feet from like bursting apart with musculature, like it's the Yu Yu Hakusho like energy bands, that are keeping his power in check.
They contain the McDuck.
The McDuck feet, a technique passed down from generations. So that and that's nice. I like that. Also too, they have and I think that this was a deliberate choice. They Capcom game, so enemies respawn a lot.
That dude, God, I hate that so much.
I know you do. And to be fair, in this game, I think that it I don't know whether it's just Capcom was like, look, this is how enemy spawns work. Just throw it in there. But there are definitely a number of platforming challenges that you need the enemy, like if you screw it up, like you need that enemy to come back because you're going to platform off of them. So it works, I'd argue, better in this game than it does in Mega Man, because in Mega Man, that's not a thing,
Yeah, if they're not there, you can't bounce up and get the treasure or the health or the 1-up or whatever. And I do get that, but part of me is like, okay, then make the respawns smarter and only respawn enemies that have like a platforming utilization. Otherwise, don't, right? But this is a hardware thing, right? Is because to keep the more things you have to keep in memory, right? This enemy has now been defeated. This one is not. This enemy's now been defeated. This one is not. This one respawns forever, right? Like there's just more crap you got to keep in memory. And I do get that, but
yeah, literally put down Mega Man / Ninja Gaiden style enemy respawns.
Yeah, that I think honestly more than the visuals in some way is like a NES era hardware limitation thing, because you butt up against how much information you can keep in memory super, super fast. Now, my problem with the respawning enemies is not just that they respawn, and this is my last comment for visuals, is I was not wildly in love with the way they did the hitbox. I think the hitbox should be shorter. So like imagine you have two characters that are like rectangles, right? Standing up on their short side. I think the enemy's hitbox should be more like a square instead of like a rectangle, because what that would allow you to do is you have to strike down, right? Like you cannot stand still and swing your cane like a shillelagh. Like you have to you have to jump and pogo down, or in some instances there is a movable object on the screen and you can hit it with your shillelagh and then it will send that movable object flying and hit the enemy. But those are the exception, right? The vast majority of enemies, you got to jump, you got to hold the cane down below you, and then you pogo off them. So because it's very fair, right? It's very consistent hitboxes. As long as you are up above them, you will hit them. But a lot of times I was just like, oh, come on. Like I didn't come down on them from the top, but the part of them that touched my sprite sideways was still my cane. Like they didn't even interact with me. They only hit the cane. It's just that the cane was traveling sideways and not straight down. So the collision wasn't registered as a hit. And that I found that to be annoying sometimes, because it's like, oh, I got knocked back because I took damage, which made this other enemy respawn. So like now I'm being overwhelmed. And it's like, it's not game breaking, but it is one of the few things in the game mechanics that kind of harshed my experience a lot. And because it's tied to that visual, it's like just make their hitbox smaller so that if it visually looks like I am striking the character in the eyeball with my cane, please count that as a hit. Even if I came in from the side, like please just count that as a hit. So that's it. I know it's like I'm a noob and a dork, and I need to get good, but give me this.
Yeah, I want this. Give it to me. No, what I'm picturing now is like, you know, Scrooge McDuck, you know, anime style, like imagine hyper anime, right? Coming down, he's like, yes, I will destroy him, and then all of a sudden the little bee's like eyes twinkle, and like the air starts to suck in around him, and he's like, no, wait, there's no way he understands the ninefold bee technique. And you know, then the bee like your staff is slightly ajar, and it's like, ah, yes, you did not score a direct hit on me, you know, like that's what was actually going down. You know, and then it just smash cuts to you playing, and Scrooge McDuck just flashes and gets knocked back.
That's kind of how it feels. It's just like this guy got iron head. Like I hit him in the face with my cane. Like, why is that not good enough?
Why? But you have anything else for visuals?
I don't. I do have something, a funny story about the audio. So I knew that this game had a famous piece of music in it, but if I'm being honest, I couldn't remember exactly what it was. And I was playing this game on stream, and I was like bouncing back and forth between the different levels because, you know, it's open level select. And I was like, oh, I haven't gone to the moon yet. And so I selected that stage, and several people in chat were just like, the song, it's the song. Oh my God. And it's like, oh, these people were literally just here, like waiting for me to get to this level. And I got to tell you, there is no single thing in this game that gives this game away more as a Capcom game than that piece of music. No visual, no sound effect, no game mechanic. That piece of music, to me, as a kid who played a lot of Mega Man Classic on the Nintendo, as soon as that song started, I was like, right, this is a Capcom game. I bet they used the same composer that did some of the music in Mega Man Classic, and I was right, they did, because it's such a Mega Man-y piece of music, and to their credit, they saved it for the right stage, right? It's the moon, it's the most sci-fi futuristic of the stages, so it makes sense for that one to sound like Mega Man. But oh damn, just so good, such a good song. I understand why people obsess over it.
Yeah, no, that song is delightful. I mean, to me, the thing that immediately happened was, I booted up the game, and the moment that it came on, I just felt that life was like a hurricane here in Duckburg, right? Just no,
Good job.
the theme song immediately. Yeah, thank you. It's strong work. The theme song, just I was like, oh right, and then just my eyes suddenly had ones and zeros flying across them, right? as I had this flashback to the actual animated opening, and I was like, oh my god, that's right, And so then I played it for a while, I put it down, and the lingering effect was that song was in my head. So I pulled it up on YouTube Music, and it wasn't the original. It was somebody's cover of it, and they did a fantastic job. I say all that to say I am very happy with the fact that my kids now know the call and response, because I literally, like they'll say, I want the DuckTales song, and they'll go, DuckTales, woo, it's like, yay. This weird 80s cartoon, early 90s cartoon that I liked as a child, probably when I was my son's age. He now knows the theme song to it. So that was the one main audio is like they and the thing is that they use it at the beginning and the opening, and they don't do it again. So it's like it's kind of like that. The Iron Man movie waited until the credits to play Iron Man. It's like everybody knows you're going to use this song at some point, but if they had it littered everywhere in the thing, it just would have been a mess. All of the songs are jams.
They are. I don't remember the show like in super high levels of detail or low levels of detail. I always mix those up, but I'm pretty sure that throughout an episode, they didn't play the DuckTales theme a bunch. So not only is it great that they included it, but putting it on the title screen is in fact the correct place for it to be, right? Because it's like you are about to play some DuckTales, right? Like DuckTales is about to happen, right? Except you're going to play it instead of,
you're about to create a DuckTale.
Yeah, you're going to live some DuckTales.
Yeah. Yeah. Except for they lived the DuckTales. They were in it. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like that. And apparently I didn't know that it was a pop culture thing. The Moon song is very good and very popular, but they're all good, man. There was not a single background song in this game where I was like, man, I gotta listen to this one again. They're all jams.
They're all jams, and they all feel like kind of appropriate. Like my memory of a lot of the classic Mega Man music is that it all feels Mega Man-y, right? Like it's all robots and science fiction noises and stuff. And that's not a complaint. It's because that theme is always appropriate, right? You're a robot fighting robots. So if you're a robot fighting robots in the mountains or in the jungles or whatever, like robot-y noises still make sense, and like synths and stuff and electronica music always feels right. And they speed it up or slow it down or change the kind of vibe, but it always has like similar instruments, I guess, is probably similar synths. Whereas in this, they had way less to work with than they would have in like a Mega Man X, or even the later Mega Man classic games. But they still tried to say, no, this is the jungle-y music. This is the underground mine music. This is the spooky Transylvania music. And they don't go to what I'm sure was a very comfortable and familiar space for that composer, the sci-fi spacey thing, until they're in sci-fi space. So it's like props, not just for writing like 6 jams or 7 jams, but also like not caving to make them all sound like Mega Man tracks.
Yeah. As far as sound effects or audio for the sake of gameplay, it was. I'm kind of still on the fence about it, right? Because I definitely think that you hit an enemy and you kill them. Sound effect is it's not. It's loud. I'm thinking like I had this note that it's loud. It's not obnoxious. And it happens, the fact that it happens so much, the pogo stick noise happens so much. and I never got to the point where I was like, I am sick of this. Means that it couldn't have been bad, but I also don't remember thinking like I wasn't getting an endorphin drip from it either. You know?
No, it just becomes background noise essentially. It's informational. It lets you know your turn signal's on.
I will say though that there are some noises that I hated. The one that comes to mind is the mirror noise in the Transylvania area.
Oh, yeah,
that
the like.
Yeah, man, I did not care for that noise.
I mean, it is kind of
I don't know,
screechy, scratchy,
scratchy, tinny, grating. You know, I was like, and yeah, and to be fair, part of it was probably the fact that there's nothing visually that should have mentioned this in visuals. There's nothing that lets you know whether or not that mirror is going to teleport you, because some of them do and some of them don't. And inevitably, when I was being teleported, it was when I didn't want to be. So that may have played a part of it. Is that when I heard that noise, I was like, no, don't take me wherever it is you're about to take me. And then, you know, they're all one-way mirrors, right? They're all good dogs, Bront. So yeah, that may have been part of it, but I did not care for that noise. But overall, I'd say that the sound effects were innocuous. I feel like innocuous isn't good enough, because if they were just innocuous, if they were just nothing, they would have eventually gotten annoying, because, man, that pogo stick noise. I mean, it always be pogoing, you know? So the fact that it didn't annoy me means that it was good, but it wasn't so good that I actually remembered it fondly.
Yeah, my feeling is these sound effects steer video gamey, right? These sound effects to me have more in common with like an Atari game or an early arcade game, where their primary function is to ensure that a small child knows a thing happened in more than one way, right? They can see a thing happening, but then they're also getting this auditory cue, and that auditory cue may be an annoying high-pitched like right when an enemy is killed, and it's like, is that the noise all these different enemies make when they die? Like from gorillas to bats, like they all make that same noise basically, and spacemen, like it's like no. But if you're a kid, you become very intimately familiar with the, am I bouncing, did I open something, did I pick up money, did I kill an enemy, right? And they're leaning way more arcadey informative than they are trying to go for any specific vibe or any specific kind of like thematic consistency with the universe you're in, right? Like, and that's not my favorite, right? I'm with you. Like it's like, okay, you optimized for function in this case entirely over the like aesthetic appeal that audio can bring to the game experience, but I get why, right? Like we're super visual creatures, and the things that tend to stick in our mind are the toe tappers, right? So like if you're going to invest in audio, do you spend a bunch of time fine tuning the noise that it makes when you smash a gorilla's skull in with your cane? Or do you spend that time making sure you can not only write this music, but then have the audio bandwidth to play it back, right? So I'm with you, but I get it. Like, I wonder if the remastered version, which I almost played, and then I was like, no, that will pollute my thinking substantially. But I wonder if the remastered version took advantage of the modern hardware and said like, oh, now we can have like thematic sound effects, like where the gorilla getting killed sounds different than the bat getting killed, which sounds different than the alien getting squashed, which sounds different than this other alien from getting squashed, right? Like that's something that that's the kind of enhancement I would hope and expect to see.
And I'm out of notes for audio, but the one thing that you made me think of is, so basically they're maximizing for a visual showed you a thing, and the audio confirmed the thing. So this is the dual authentication for video games, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like there, we gave you two ways to know the thing happened.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You saw the thing and you heard the thing, right? So it's you know, confirmed. Like I saw the thing and I heard the noise, therefore I can confirm that enemy died.
Yeah. I have one other audio note. I wasn't really sure if to include this or where to include this, but I just think it's an insane story. I'll probably never have a better time to share.
Yeah.
So, um, I snowboard, and even if you go with other people,
Still,
yeah, um, even if you go with other people, that can be like a sort of solitary hobby because you're like away from them when you're moving, right? Like you talk on the chairlift, you talk when you're waiting in line, but like when you're going down the mountain, hopefully you're not close enough to have like a long conversation with the person next to you. It's just not
you have
safe.
to be so skilled to make that happen. You know,
And
like,
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. I want space. Please stay the hell away from me. Like I should have blinking lights all over my jacket so people know I'm a hazard. But I tend to kind of like hum or sing to myself just because there's no noise, right? You have headgear on, there's the swoosh of the snow, but like there's really not a lot going on. And somehow, and I've thought about this a lot. I have no idea how to explain this. The piece of music that comes to mind when I am snowboarding is the theme song to DuckTales. Which I will
that is weird.
sing out loud to myself as I'm snowboarding down the mountain. So when I booted up the game and it was like, you immediately start singing along, right? Because it goes, there's nothing, right? It's a Nintendo game. So just immediately, bam, you're on the title screen. Life is like a hurt, right? And then that's awesome. But the fact that that's my first thought and like my 1A thought is I've been snowboarding in a while. It's like such an awkward, like now that those neurons are tied together, like that's it. This is just how my brain works now.
Well, right, and then you having to explain to somebody because all of a sudden you boot up DuckTales, and then you just turn to whoever's in the room like, "Hey, we should go snowboarding." Well, I mean, sure, but why? Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't mean to sound so incredulous with the snowboarding thing. It's just the last time I knew that you went snowboarding was, what would it be, 15 years ago now? Like when we went snowboarding?
Oh, yeah.
Years?
So after I moved to the mountains, I tried both. I tried snowboarding and skiing. And I've decided to stick it out with snowboarding. I just haven't gone recently because they were like, oh, we're all closed because of the pandemic and we're reopened. And just kidding. Only like one guy can be on the mountain at a time. It's just last couple seasons in this part of the world have been a mess. But what isn't a mess in this part of the world? Anyway, we should talk about the controls and mechanics.
We should talk about the controls and mechanics. So I actually have a note for controls. So in order to, and this is such a minor gripe, but I'm going to whine about it anyways, because I never have a note on controls, right? Is that I think that it's a little, so there is nothing that you can do. There's two attacks, right? You have your golf swing and your pogo stick, right?
And the golf swing hardly counts.
Yeah, I mean the golf swing is more like a tool. You use it to move stuff around, right? There's no reason why you should have to hold down while you're jumping through the air to do your pogo attack. Like to me, that's a superfluous button press, right? Because not holding down would do nothing different. It's not like you have a forward attack, right? Or anything that happens when you press B, right? So I should just be able to jump and then press B, and then that hits my pogo, right? It did not take long to internalize that you have to hit down, and because it is a downward directional attack, right? So I mean, it kind of makes sense, but from my seat, again, and not to play the accessibility card or anything like that, right? But going from an accessibility standpoint, it's like there's no reason to make somebody hold two buttons when not holding the button. All not holding the button does is cause you to not execute on the attack, which can become problematic, right? So, like I said, I just felt that I was like, well, in the same way that with classic Mega Man is, I was like, why am I not always charging? I shouldn't have to hold down B. I should just always be charging. So so that was just kind of a minor thing where I was like, this feels like a superfluous button press. Minor, but I wanted to bring it up because it's a controls note, and I had one.
Yeah, no, I actually had a similar thought, which is like, don't make me do this, Capcom. Like, what is your obsession with making players hold buttons down? Like, it's just like charging up the Mega Buster, right? It's literally exactly like that. It's to do this thing, you have to hold this button, and it's the same company making that decision. So it feels like it's a really similar choice. And I don't know if this is something they would do differently nowadays, right? Because like the remaster of this game, whether it's good or bad, I don't know, but they probably make some decisions that are literally just, well, this is how it was in the original, right? Because if you change every little thing, you end up with like a totally different thing that's just like cosplaying, right? So some things it's like, oh, well, you had to hold down an attack in the NES one and you do also in the remaster. I don't know if that's true, but I just mean like, for example, I would almost wonder, like, if you made a game like this today using a mechanic like this, because the attack of the cane pointing down is how you kill like 99% of enemies. It's also how you open treasure chests. It's also how you destroy destructible parts of the environment. And it's also how you traverse certain lethal parts of the environment where there's like these big like spike floors and stuff, and you literally, the only way to get over them is to pogo over them. So I almost wonder if you made this game today, like if you were building it for the first time, if you would have like the accessibility mode that's when I am jumping, always pogo automatically, right? Like just assume that's what I want to do. Or it's like a toggle, like press the button once to enter pogo, and if you don't press it, you don't, you know what I mean? Like to remove that holding the button. Because I don't know, I'm not going to say there were 0 times where pogoing isn't what I wanted to do, but I mean, we're talking a single digit percentage, right? Like,
yeah, approaching 0.
Of all the jumps, the amount of times I didn't want the pogo stick was really small, because there's a lot of treasures and collectibles and stuff that are up high. There's a lot of platforms that are up high. There's even enemies that are up high. So like you want to bounce from this thing onto that thing, or you want to bounce from this to that to a third thing, right? So it's like, it's very rare you're doing platforming or attacking or collecting that doesn't involve the pogo. So
with the the one notable exception that I am certain they did on purpose, the Himalayas level.
Yes, which is kind of amazing. It's amazing that they were like, we need to have a place where this is actually punished, because that will be a super cool twist on the mechanics. Like, that's great.
Yeah. No, to me, it was so you like pogoing, eh? Have all of the pogoing in the, like, you know, but it just really felt like the game looked directly at me and was like, so I know that you've been using this first order optimal strategy for quite some time. You will not be allowed to beat the game this way. You can have a lot of fun in a lot of levels, but you need to show some additional degree of mastery if you're going to clear this level, which again, you know, it's like, all right, you know, because worst case scenario, you don't play the Himalayas that much. You don't start there, you know, because one of the other things that mechanically they do is you got 3 lives. I think you can get more lives, but
you can. And I think on easy, do you have more health and more lives, or just more health?
Just more health, to the best of my knowledge. But you got three lives, right? So, and so it's not like where you know you get 3 lives per stage, right? No, you get 3 lives total. So if the Himalayas is not your jam, then you don't start there, right? Or alternatively, you absolutely start there, because if you're not going to clear it, then you know your run's shot, right? But yeah, no. So I think that's a good thing. Game's hard, dude. It's so hard, man. It's hard.
It's NES hard.
It is super NES hard, and even on easy, the game's really hard, man. Like and to the point where we were kind of talking about this a little bit beforehand, is that this has a lot of Mega Man feel. Like absolutely it does. It's got some Castlevania feel to me, man, with just how difficult it is and how much stuff like you just kind of need to know. You know, like once you know it, you know it. But you got to kind of know where, in the same way where you're not going to beat Castlevania on the first shot, right? Because all of a sudden you're going to see this weird dragon statue and you're going to say, hey, what's the deal with that dragon statue? Holy, and then, you gotta know what the mysterious roasted dungeon wall chicken is. You gotta learn that sort of stuff, right? And this game is very similar in that it has, for instance, the mirrors in the Transylvania area, right? You gotta learn what mirrors go where and how that works. You can golf swing off the helmets on the armors in the. Like, I didn't know that for some time until I suddenly tried it. And then once I knew it, I was like, this is huge, man. This is a huge difference. This makes a big difference. There's an area of the level where you can Super Mario Brothers get up above and then go over and then clamber down and get some like bonus monies. There's just so much to this game that is not only NES hard, but you got to internalize some of this stuff, which is why I think that the replayability and the fan base behind this is so strong, right? Because there's so much depth to this game. You can just plug it in. You can plug it in and start playing it immediately, right? Because, I mean, it's just like, what do? You pogo around. That's it, right? But you could probably play this game for hours and hours and hours and still be suddenly finding new and weird, interesting ways that the game kind of plays on itself, which is really impressive. Hard, though.
So I'm in 100% agreement, but instead of just repeating that, I'm going to explain what they did wrong that ruins that feeling for me. Because I'm totally with you, right? Like the fact that this game is sort of like a Metroidvania light, where it's like, oh no, you got to go to this level. You have to go to Transylvania and get the key that opens the mine. You can't just go straight to the mine. It's like, oh, but it's available on the level select. No, it's stupid. You got to go get the key, right? So
dummy.
There's all these cool little secrets and hidden things and things that are required, but that require backtracking or going through certain levels in a certain order. And like, here's the two things that I think they did that are really unfortunate choices. And one of them I can explain, and one of them I can explain, but it makes me sad. This game has a free level select at the right as soon as you turn it on. It's like, where do you want to go? Right. And you have
just
to,
like Mega Man.
Yeah, exactly like Mega Man, right? Like a super Capcom-y thing to do, right? It's like, okay, it actually, you know what else it's just like is, this is going to sound stupid, but I am serious. Street Fighter, right? Another super famous Capcom game is like, okay, you turn on the game. Who do you want to fight? Right. Like, and when you fight them, you go to their place, right? It's essentially a stage select. So I get why they did that. And I think it's super cool, but it's deeply hampered by the fact that you don't have unlimited continues. And that is the lesson they should have stolen from Castlevania, right? Because they stole it's hard and you have to memorize things, and knowing certain things will gives you either an advantage or makes them even possible. But they didn't steal the unlimited continues, which is part of why people give Castlevania a pass, because you can keep trying. So that's one thing. The other thing, and this one is more teeth grinding to me because I'm an old man now. Mega Man games, if I said, what is a mechanic that's not in Mega Man that is in classic 2D Mario, how many guesses do you think it would take you to get to, well, Mega Man stages don't have a timer? Right? Probably not a lot. Why do the levels in this have a timer? They designed these big sprawling levels that are full of secrets that you can attack in multiple non-linear ways, where backtracking is either encouraged or required, or they're trying to make you get lost so that you have to backtrack to find the correct path, because some of the stages, especially like in Transylvania with the mirrors, like stuff looks similar. Why did they add a timer? And I checked. If you let the timer run out, you just die. So it just costs you a life, which means you're now behaving recklessly because you're like, oh God, I got to solve problems before. And I mean, it's long. It's like a 500 count, I think. And it's not seconds. It's a count. Like Mario is not seconds. It just counts down. But man, if they took away the timer so that the stages, you were like free to explore the stages, and they gave you unlimited continues where losing 3 lives just kicked you back to the stage select, not to the title screen, and you have to start over. Those are, I would take those changes over fixing the hitbox, no question. Like in this insane false dichotomy I've just created, because then I could internalize the hitbox thing, but I'm not going to internalize the entire game. I can't. Not at this stage of my life.
Yeah, and I think that I agree completely, right? And we touched on it briefly where yeah, you have the 3 lives and that's it. Yeah, I did not care for that at all, because with Castlevania, you can just choke the rivers with your dead, and just keep trying and trying and trying, which eventually comes back to cycle time, right? The cycle time in this game, right, is just not great, because you can do thing A, then thing B, then thing C, and then you've now died 3 times. Alrighty, well, I guess it's back to the drawing board, which does kind of go back to the NES hard, right? Like that was very common in the NES days. There are a few like shining examples where they said, hey, there's no quarters. So why lives? Why timer? Why are we draining people out of their ability to continue to play our game? And because I mean that's the thing, is that with Castlevania is that you had to internalize like where you were going, and especially with the ways that the enemies respawn, because they could definitely make the argument where it's like, well, if we allow you to try the same thing over and over and over again too quickly, then you'll internalize it too fast, and you'll learn the patterns, and it'll be done. And that won't be any fun, but that is fun. Ninja Gaiden's fun, because then it's a rhythm game, right? On top of that, the way that the enemies spawn kind of preclude that, because you can absolutely create a complete mess for yourself if you accidentally spawn enemies in at the wrong place and at the wrong time. So I don't know. I mean, other than just to make the game longer, I don't know, or because they were just staples at the time. I'm not sure why they would do that. I do agree, though, that the one mechanic that they tried to put in to mitigate that a little bit is Launchpad McQuack, right? Is he's there so that way if you're like, dude, I've got 1 pip left, and also too, this is a minor side note. On easy, each pip is 2 hits. I would have also paid money to have something that tells me which hit on that pip I'm on.
It's colored.
No. What I'm saying is like, so it goes from red when it's full and then yellow when it's not, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying though is that on easy, each one of those pips is 2 hits.
Oh,
so it goes
yeah.
red, yellow, and
Yes.
you lose that pip, right? So I'm saying that like, so you have 6 hit points, but it's represented by 3 pips, So sometimes it would matter, because I was like, do I have 2 hit points left or 1 hit point left? Because I have 1 hit point left. I'm getting out of here, If I had 2 hit points left, I might fiddle fart around in this other screen and then come back to Launchpad McQuack, You just had to kind of remember. But I think that's their kind of way to mitigate that a little bit. But it's a little bit, because you got to find where he is. And on top of that, you could just go through this litany of garbage and you're like, well, there's no way I'm going to make it back to him now. I've got 1 hit left, So it helps, but not enough.
And I might be mistaken, but I think you can maybe only do that once per level. So like once you use him in the jungle, I don't think he's there anymore.
I did not test that, because to be fair, I kind of one-shotted this game. Like I just beat everything on my first go. So,
yeah, no, I get that. I mean, I would expect nothing different from you. So,
so I did, and that's really the burden that I face with these reviews, is I don't know what it's like to play it poorly.
So I just want to tell you this real quick, because this is the kind of thing you can very easily confirm. So in the DuckTales Remastered, instead of pips, it's hearts, and they do half hearts, so you can tell where you are on that hit point. And based on these screenshots, there's no timer. So
nice.
I don't know what they did with continues or if they even messed with that, but it's like, oh, good. Okay, so they did take some of the more annoying things and clean them up.
And to be fair, I will say I agree with you completely. Where I've learned this in my old age. There is nothing more heartbreaking to me that when I reach the ultimate failure state, right? So you run out of lives, you run out of health, you whatever, right? Um, and it says like game over, you lose, right? That when the game, then the next thing I see is the title screen, my heart breaks.
Yep.
You know, it happened in we've been playing just by happenstance a number of games in quick succession that do that. Mega Man Legends did that, you know, and every time I'm just like, no. And Mega Man Legends, of course, had a save, right? So, but that meant that I'm like, you're not gonna reduce the cycle time for me at all, are you? You're gonna make me go in, load my save. It's as though I just turned on the game, and that is just always heartbreaking to me. And the reason why, and there's something to be said about that actually being a point in its favor for humane game design, right? Because they're like, leave. Now's the time. If you're going to put the controller down, now's the time. Go do anything else, right? The downside for me is that's when I put the controller down and I leave, because I'm like, well, I mean, I guess I'm done for this play session. So it actually dramatically reduces the amount of time that I can enjoy the game, because it just feels, instead of it being an easy out, it feels like a hard back in. Like I've now got to muster the emotional fortitude to start all over from the beginning. I mean, even roguelikes like Enter the Gungeon, when you die, it just kicks you back to the beginning of the dungeon, not the title screen. So you've still saved like that 30 seconds of like getting through the title screen, getting through the opening little stage thing, and now you're in the level, right? So yeah, whenever it says like, hey, here's the title screen again, I'm like, oh no, not like this.
Not like these. Yeah, I think in this game's case, and there's definitely other games where this is true, is the going back to the title screen is also where the difficulty select is. So if you were just playing on hard, you would not want to be booted back to the stage select necessarily and be like, oh, okay, this is way too hard for me. I'm going to maybe do something else, right? And so going back to the title screen, at least in the specific case of this game, gives you like, okay, you're going to start playing again. Do you want to play on easy, normal, or hard? I don't even think I tried it on hard. Why would you do that?
Yeah,
but
I also did not.
But I do think this is like yet another remnant of coin ops, right? Is like, well, their game's over, and not just their game is over, but like now they're going to walk away, and someone else is going to come up, so they need to be on the title screen, right? Which is, I don't think it's a great excuse, because I mean, this is 1989. We're talking 4 full years into Nintendo's glorious return to home consoles. So it's like, by now, people who are designing games for home consoles, like, okay, yes, arcades, but like, this is something different, and it's been different for half of a decade at this point. So I think it's like, okay, I get it, but this is such a hilarious thing to have aged so poorly, because I doubt anyone thought twice. Nobody even thought once about it at this time.
Yeah,
nobody said like,
this is what happens.
Oh man, it's going to be psychologically crushing if we throw them back to the title screen. But now, even with Mega Man Legends, again, you could argue why they throw me back to the title screen in case you want to load a different save. Instead of them building a bespoke UI when you die to ask you, do you want to load your most recent save or do you want to load some different save? They just dump you back to the title screen, which is where the save and load UI is, right? But something about being dumped back to the title screen has now been so tightly coupled to, oh no, I'm out of quarters, right? It's just soul crushing to be like, oh no, life is like a hurricane.
Here in Duckburg. And to your point, right, is I like the idea of you saying, like, oh well, it gives you the chance to change the difficulty, right? But I'm just picturing myself as a 6, 8, 12-year-old, whatever, right? And I'm playing a game, right? And let's just say that it doesn't do that, right? Like let's take DuckTales, but assume that it doesn't kick you back to the title screen, that it allows you to, just jump right back into the stage select, right? And And so I'm like, oh, I'm awesome. I'm gonna play it on hard. So I put it on hard, and I go through and blah blah blah. I'm dead. Right. I could imagine emotionally being able to flood my body with the adrenaline and other anger hormones to quickly contract my abdominal muscles to lean forward and hard snake strike the reset button, you know, to kick myself back to the title screen and be like, nope, bam, and then back on the title screen and like select easy. Now let's try it again. So again, like to your point, right, is that it is emotionally soul crushing to be forced back to the title screen. And I think that if the opposite thing were true, I think I could and it's hard to find the emotional fortitude to journey on. I think I could easily find the emotional fortitude to slap the game around and tell it, make this easier for me. Like that, that would be easier to find. But I think that's kind of all I got, man. You got anything else?
The only other thing I will say, just because we gushed a lot about the love and attention they put into the characters' animation. So I did a quick count while we were talking, and not counting animations that are just mirrored, where like this is walking to the left, this is walking to the right, which are identical. Scrooge has 26 unique frames of animation across this game.
Pretty impressive.
Right? He has a complicated walk cycle. He's got some like reaction response things he does. He makes a unique face when he gets stuck in the snow that he only makes there, right? Like that's awesome. Like, I'm not going to count the sprites for every game that we like the artwork of, but that's pretty damn cool for them to have taken the time. So good on them. When we talk about how this game hold up, I'm struggling here a little bit, to be honest, because on the one hand, this game are NES hard, and that's not everybody's cup of tea. At the same time, like, we recommended Castlevania, and that game's hard. And if we ever played any of the early Mega Mans, I would probably recommend them, and they're hard. Like, it's hard for me to say the hitbox on this was so frustrating that I think it's experience ruining. It's a combination of the difficult hitbox, 3 lives and you're done, and 0 continues, no passwords, no nothing, right? So I'm going to give this a no nostalgia goggles required, with the caveat that really you should probably go play the remaster. This game,
that's fair.
This game is fantastic, and it's hard. Like, it's really hard, but it's beautiful to look at. The music is all bangers. Like, the controls are not always in your favor, but they are very consistent. Like, I never felt like, oh, that was the game's fault, right? Like, things are NES consistent, right? Just like Ninja Gaiden, just like Castlevania, just like early Mega Man. Like, there's things that suck, but they at least always happen the exact same way every single time. So if you are comfortable choosing to memorize them, you can. I just have kind of gotten to the point where I don't get as much satisfaction out of that as I might have when I was a lad. So I will say, like, as a piece of art, as a crafted object, this gets no nostalgia goggles required. But if I play this game again, it's almost definitely going to be the remaster. And if you've never played this game before, probably just seek out the remaster, because even not having played it, I suspect you will get all the parts that we loved about the original, but you won't have to deal with some of these rough edges. So no nostalgia goggles required, pseudo asterisk.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, because that's kind of similar to what we said with like Ocarina of Time, right? Is that, it's like no nostalgia required. Go play the remaster though, because it and I would agree with that. No nostalgia goggles required. It has some sharp edges to where you're like, I don't know, man. You know what it is it's kind of like whenever you see a parent, who says like, oh yeah, like I let my 6-year-old watch, I don't know, Ren and Stimpy or something, right? And you're like, all right. I mean, they're probably not going to get the more adult stuff and some of the gross out humor. They're probably just looking at it for like some of the colors like that. That's probably okay. That's kind of where I'm at with the no nostalgia goggles required, right? It's I could say if somebody said to me like, "Man, I played the game, I had a terrible time," I'd be like, I could get that, but I would still stand by that recommendation. I mean, the game there's a lot of the cost of entry is very low, and there is a lot of depth there. There's a lot to do. There's just so much to this game. There's race cars, lasers, airplanes. It's a duck blur, right? You might even solve a mystery or rewrite history.
Woo!
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all these